Welcome to a deep dive into an idea that's really reshaped how we think about building things, new products, new companies, especially now when everything changes so fast. Today, we're unpacking The Lean Startup by Ries. We're drawing heavily from his public lecture at the LSE Department of Management. Our mission, really, is to pull out the most important insights from this stuff, help you understand how to navigate that extreme uncertainty that comes with creating anything new, and crucially, how to avoid wasting just tons of precious time and resources.
It's a really fascinating approach, isn't it? It kind of turns some traditional management thinking completely on its head. The core idea and the material really hammers this home is just stop wasting people's time. Simple as that. We'll explore exactly what that means and why that motto is just so vital, whether you're, a huge corporation or just a tiny team.
Okay, let's unpack that foundational concept first. How does Eric Ries actually redefine what a startup is? Because this is probably not what, immediately springs to mind for many people.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is how broad the definition is, he calls it. A human institution designed to deliver a new product or service under conditions of extreme uncertainty. And the key bit, it has nothing to do with the size of the company, sector of the economy, or industry.
Nothing to do with size. So.
Right. So whether you're, an innovation lab inside a giant corporation or, two people in a garage, if you're facing that extreme uncertainty about a new offering, Reese says you are a startup.
Okay. And why is getting that definition right so important for you, the listener? What does it immediately signal about how we should approach these things?
Because it tells us straight away that a startup isn't just a small version of a big company, it's fundamentally an experiment. And, the source material is pretty blunt. Most startups fail.
Right.
So the implication is huge. The goal isn't just to build something, it's to manage that experiment, to maximize validated learning and minimize the chances of just total failure.
That makes so much sense. And that leads right into another really core idea he pushes. Entrepreneurship is management. It kind of blows up that whole two guys in a garage myth, doesn't it? It's about building something sustainable, a system.
Absolutely, not just the myth. The goal, he says, is to create an institution, not just a product. And the material suggests that, traditional management practices, the kind of stuff often taught in business schools, they're actually really poorly suited for this context, for extreme uncertainty.
Because they assume stability.
Exactly. They assume you can predict and plan, but here you can't. So you need new practices, a totally different kind of management system.
It makes me think of Frederick Winslow Taylor, the father of scientific management. He said way back in 1911, in the past, the man was first. In the future, the system will be first. How does Lean Startup connect to that idea of systems, but for this super uncertain environment?
It's a great connection. It's about standardizing the learning process itself rather than just standardizing, say, work tasks or production efficiency like Taylor did. It's a management system designed for innovation, for navigating the unknown, not just for being efficient at something you already know how to do. It's about applying a scientific approach, really.
Okay, so if entrepreneurship is management and it needs these new practices for dealing with uncertainty, what are the sort of guiding principles that Ries lays out for this whole system?
Well, the source highlights 5 core principles we've kind of touched on. Entrepreneurs are everywhere, that broad definition we talked about. And entrepreneurship is management. The other 3 are really key. Validated learning, build, measure, learn, and innovation accounting. And out of those, validated learning is just incredibly crucial.
Validated learning. And that's tied to avoiding what the material calls achieving failure. That phrase just jumps out. So what does that actually mean? Why is it such a powerful idea?
It really does jump out, yeah. It's this powerful, sometimes painful paradox, right?
Yeah.
You can hit every single project milestone on time, on budget, high quality, beautiful design even, and still have created complete waste because nobody wants it.
Ouch.
Yeah. The source asks that critical question. If we're building something nobody wants, what does it matter if we accomplish it? The real insight here, I think, is that traditional management often just measures efficiency in executing the plan. Lean Startup forces you to constantly ask, efficient at what? Because if you're efficiently building the wrong thing, well, that's the biggest waste of all.
That idea of achieving failure, building the wrong thing really well, it brings us straight to one of Eric Ries's most famous concepts, maybe the most misunderstood, the pivot.
Mm.
How does that fit in? How does it help avoid waste, and what does it actually mean to pivot?
Right, the pivot. It means change directions but stay grounded in what we've learned. So crucially, it's not just abandoning ship or randomly trying something else. It's an intentional, structured course correction, and it's based on evidence on that validated learning.
Okay, structured, not random.
Exactly. And the material gives some really striking examples. Companies that started out doing like digital cash for PDAs, remember those? And they evolved into online payments for eBay. Think PayPal.
Wow. Okay.
Others were building basic interpreters and became, well, the world's largest operating systems monopoly, Microsoft. And one famous example, an online games company that was shocked to discover through user data that it was actually a photo sharing site. That became Flickr, or a similar story for Slack evolving from a game.
Those are incredible examples. It really shows the power of learning and just being willing to adapt. But then there's this emphasis on speed. Speed wins. That phrase sometimes makes people nervous. Does this relentless focus on speed mean, cutting corners, sacrificing quality, or depth of learning?
That's a really common question and a key misunderstanding. Speed wins in this context isn't about rushing blindly or being sloppy, not at all. It's about minimizing the total time through that build, measure, learn loop we mentioned, getting validated feedback faster.
Ah, so faster loops, not just faster coding.
Precisely. The quality of the learning isn't sacrificed. You could argue it's enhanced because you're getting real feedback from actual customers much sooner. This lets you validate, or just as importantly, invalidate your core assumptions really quickly, which reduces the time between those necessary pivots. It connects right back to the roots of the whole lean revolution. People like W. Edwards Deming, who famously said, "The customer is the most important part of the production line. Here, the customer is key to the learning line."
Okay, so at the heart of it is that build, measure, learn feedback loop you keep mentioning. How does that cycle actually work in practice? What's the ultimate goal?
The goal is simple: minimize total time through the loop. That's it. It's about rapidly turning ideas into some kind of product, even a very minimal one, then putting it in front of customers to see how they actually react, measure that reaction, and then use that data, that learning, to decide, do we pivot, change direction, or do I persevere, keep going on the current path? And this whole iterative process, it's managed through something crucial called innovation accounting.
Innovation accounting. Okay, that sounds like it brings some real discipline to what could otherwise feel chaotic.
Yeah.
It has the 3 learning milestones. Can you walk us through those? How do they structure the learning?
Sure. It's basically a structured way to measure progress when the traditional metrics, like revenue or market share, might still be zero or meaningless. So, first, milestone 1, establish the baseline. You do this by building a minimum viable product, an MVP, and measuring how those first initial customers behave. What are your starting numbers?
Okay, get your starting point.
Exactly. Then milestone 2, tune the engine. This is where you run experiments. You tweak the product to marketing, whatever, trying to actively improve those baseline metrics. Are your changes having the desired effect? Finally, milestone 3. You reach a point where your experiments start showing diminishing returns.
Yeah.
The improvements get smaller and smaller for the same amount of effort.
Right, you've squeezed all the juice out of that approach.
Pretty much. And that's the point where you face the critical decision. Pivot or persevere. Do we need a fundamental change, or have we validated enough to double down?
Let's dive deeper into that minimum viable product, the MVP. Because, wow, is that term misunderstood? So many people hear minimum and think bad or unfinished.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of the most misused terms, I think. The actual definition is key. The minimum set of features needed to learn from early evangelists. And early evangelists is his term. These aren't just any early adopters. They're those visionary customers who have the problem so badly they'll champion your early, maybe slightly clunky solution. They'll even help you figure it out.
They'll forgive the missing features if it solves their core pain point.
Exactly. They can fill in the gaps, as the material says. The real purpose of the MVP is not to be a cheap first version of the final product. Its purpose is to avoid building products that nobody wants, and critically, to maximize the learning per dollar spent. And the source is really explicit. The MVP is probably much more minimum than you think.
Much more minimum. So it's not about making a perfect tiny thing, but a functional probe you can learn from quickly, testing one specific assumption maybe.
That's a great way to put it, a functional probe. Visionary customers can fill in the gaps on missing features if the product solves a real problem. This whole approach lets you achieve a big vision in small increments without going in circles. But, and this is important, it requires a commitment to iteration. You have to be willing to learn and change. And interestingly, the source also suggests it's mainly for big vision products. If you're just making a slightly better mousetrap with known demand, maybe you don't need such a minimal MVP. It's for when uncertainty is high.
Okay, that makes sense. The source also talks about different, maybe more traditional ways people build products and the sort of fears that often get associated with trying this MVP approach. What are those anxieties teams run into?
Yeah, it contrasts the MVP approach with two other common ways. One is trying to maximize chances of success by spending ages building the perfect product up front. The big problem there, no customer feedback until the very end. Huge risk.
All your eggs in one basket.
Totally. The other approach is that sort of release early, release often idea, but without a clear learning goal. The danger there is you end up just chasing whatever customers think they want today, running in circles, maybe building lots of features nobody really values deeply. As for the fears around MVP, a big one is the false negative, worrying that customers rejected your grand vision when really the MVP was just too minimal. It didn't even communicate the core value prop.
Right, you underbuilt it.
Or there's the visionary complex, the team thinking, customers don't know what they want, we know best, which completely misses the point of validated learning. And finally, just being too busy to learn, that feeling of, look, it would just be faster to build the whole thing right the first time, which, paradoxically, is often way slower and riskier.
It sounds like overcoming those fears requires a whole toolkit of practices designed to make you, as the source says, build faster, measure faster, and learn faster. What are some of the standout techniques highlighted?
Yeah, there's a whole set of practices. On the build faster side, a really key concept is continuous deployment. This basically means getting new code, new features, out into production incredibly quickly, often multiple times a day.
Multiple times a day. Wow.
Yeah, the material gives this amazing example from a company called IMVU, a social gaming platform. Their time from a developer checking in code to that code being live for customers was just 20 minutes.
20 minutes. That's
It is.
a little...
Well, the whole idea is you want to be able to quickly tell a good change from a bad change. And if it's a bad change, you need to be able to rapidly revert it, pull it back, like shutting down the line in a factory if there's a defect. It forces you to work in really small batches. At IMVU, they consider just 3 days of work to be a large batch, something to be avoided.
Okay, that speed is mind-blowing. But how do they manage that? How do they identify and fix problems that quickly without, everything constantly breaking for users?
Right, that's the critical question. It relies on practices like what the source calls the cluster immune system. Think of it like your body's immune system for your software cluster. It's not about preventing every single tiny bug beforehand. That's impossible. It's about having systems to instantly detect and isolate a problem before it spreads and takes down the whole thing.
So rapid response.
Exactly. It involves things like developers running tests locally first, then a continuous integration server, basically an automated quality check system. All the tests have to pass or the build is rejected, the line is shut down. Then they do incremental deployments, maybe releasing to a small percentage of users first, with real-time monitoring watching key metrics. If metrics go bad, the change is automatically rolled back. There's even predictive monitoring that might wake someone up if metrics start trending weirdly even before they cross a threshold. The whole principle is have every problem once, learn from it, build a test for it, and focus on fast response over prevention.
Okay, have every problem once. That's a powerful idea.
Yeah.
And how do we learn faster when something inevitably does go wrong?
Wow.
Because it sounds like problems are treated as learning opportunities, not just failures.
Precisely. Problems are data, and that's where the 5 whys technique comes in. It's a simple but incredibly effective root cause analysis method for continuous improvement. When something unexpected happens, a bug, a server outage, a metric tanking, you don't just fix the surface issue, you ask why it happened. Then you ask why about that answer. And you keep going, typically about 5 times.
You get past the symptoms to the real root cause.
Exactly. You drill down to the underlying issue, and then, importantly, you make proportional investments in prevention based on that root cause. The core insight, which is fascinating, is that behind every supposed technical problem is usually a human problem. Maybe a process issue, a communication breakdown, a lack of training. So you fix the cause, not just the symptom. It forces you to look at your processes, your team dynamics. It can be uncomfortable, but it's how you genuinely improve.
It really sounds like measurement is just woven into the fabric of everything here. And when we talk measurement, we inevitably land on split tests or A/B testing. How critical is that for this whole lean approach?
Oh, absolutely fundamental. The material says split testing all the time is key to validating your hypotheses. It's how you scientifically test your ideas. Does changing this button color actually increase clicks? Does this new feature actually improve retention? You don't guess, you test. And it stresses making it simple enough for everyone on the team to use. It even suggests it could be implemented in just one line of code in some systems, making experimentation a constant, easy part of the workflow, not a big project.
Right. Make it easy to ask questions and get real answers from user behavior. And for people really focused on metrics, on the data, what are the triple A's of metrics mentioned?
Yes, the three A's. They stand for actionable, accessible, and auditable. Ooh, actionable means the metric should show clear cause and effect, so you can actually do something based on it. Vanity metrics, like total registered users, often aren't actionable. Accessible means the data needs to be easily understood by everyone involved, not locked away in complex reports only data scientists can decipher, maybe simple dashboards. And auditable means the data has to be credible, people need to trust it. Can we trace it back to the source? Can we run a sanity check?
Actionable, accessible, auditable.
Yeah.
Got it.
And the material also gives some great advice. Measure the macro by always looking at cohort-based metrics over time. That means tracking groups of users who started around the same time a cohort and seeing how their specific behavior changes over weeks or months. It gives you a much clearer picture than just looking at overall daily averages, which can hide underlying trends. And the mantra: split test the small, measure the large. Test specific small changes, but see how they impact the big picture metrics for that cohort over time. The example data shows comparing things like registered users, downloads, active days, revenue, across control, and experiment groups to make informed decisions.
This is all incredibly powerful stuff. But like any really big idea, the lean startup has definitely gathered some misconceptions along the way. What are the common myths we need to bust for our listener so they really get the core idea?
Yeah, that's important. The material actually calls out 4 key myths directly. Myth number 1, lean means cheap, bootstrapped, running on fumes.
Right, just doing things on the cheap.
But the truth is, the lean startup method is not about cost, it is about speed. Capital efficiency, yes, but the main goal is learning velocity, not just low burn rate. Myth number 2. The lean startup is only for Web 2.0 or internet or consumer software companies.
Yeah, I hear that one a lot.
But the reality is, it applies to all companies that face uncertainty about what customers will want. Doesn't matter if you're building hardware, a service, enterprise software, even a nonprofit initiative. If there is uncertainty, these principles apply. Myth 3. Lean startups are always small, bootstrap startups.
Kind of related to the cheap myth.
Exactly. But the truth is, lean startups are ambitious and are able to deploy large amounts of capital. It's a methodology for managing uncertainty effectively. It's not about the size of your funding round. Big companies use it too. And the 4th myth, this one's really important. Lean startups replace vision with data or customer feedback. Like you're just asking customers what to build.
Ah, the visionary founder versus data drone debate.
Right. But the truth, according to Ries, is lean startups are driven by a compelling vision and are rigorous about testing each element of this vision. The vision provides the direction, the hypotheses you need to test. The data and the learning tell you how to best navigate towards that vision, or when the vision itself needs tweaking. It's vision plus validated learning, not one replacing the other.
Okay, those clarifications are really helpful. This whole deep dive into the lean startup, it really shows that innovation isn't just, a lightning strike of a brilliant idea. It's actually a disciplined, iterative process. It's about learning, adapting, especially when you're facing that profound uncertainty. It's almost like a science of discovery.
Exactly. It's about building a management system specifically designed to discover what actually works in the real world. To genuinely stop wasting people's time, their talent, their energy on building products or features that nobody actually wants or needs. And it reframes the pivot not as some kind of failure or admission of defeat, but as a strength, as a sign of intelligent adaptation based on evidence.
Yeah, the principles we've unpacked, from really understanding the MVP and validated learning through to practices like continuous deployment and the discipline of innovation accounting. They offer this rigorous framework. It's for anyone, really, trying to bring something genuinely new into the world, whether it's a product, a service, or even a new process. It's such a powerful reminder that it's the speed of learning and that continuous adaptation, maybe more than just aiming for perfection right out of the gate, that really paves the way to eventual success.
And that brings up a really important question, I think, for you, the listener, to reflect on. If a startup is fundamentally an experiment, and we know that most startups fail, What bad plans, maybe small ones, maybe big ones, might you be successfully executing right now in your work, in a side project, maybe even somewhere else in your life? How could embracing more of an experimentation mindset,
Yeah.
being willing to consider a pivot that's actually rooted in what you're learning, how could that change your trajectory? How could it help you learn faster and ultimately waste less of your own precious time?